Welcome, Dennis Rivers. We're delighted to have you here. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about compassionate communications and a little bit about how we can apply this in our daily lives, but more importantly, how we apply this as entrepreneurs to communicate with our customers and to communicate with our team to make sure that we're getting our message across and communicating and hearing the messages well so that we can provide a better way to make entrepreneuring happen. Dennis, welcome.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. You said something really interesting. You said we are all concerned about getting our message across. And that's a great place to start because that's where practically everybody starts. We're much more focused on getting our message across than exploring the situation of our listener. But if we really do want to get our message across, then I think it would help us a lot to listen first and try and understand the needs of our listener before we make our presentation, before we express what we want or how we view things.
Yes, everyone's in the same boat, aren't we? We all want to get our message across, but if you're listened to first, you're more apt to listen. So the listen starts first, huh?
Well, that's the first chapter in the 7 Challenges workbook. And it says, start by listening more carefully and more responsively. Now, I remember when I was doing the research for the 7 Challenges workbook, which everybody can download for free from newconversations.net, I came across a history of communication theory, 2,000 years of communication theory, from the ancient Greeks up to about 1900. And what was really interesting to me was that listening was not in the index. So we've got that. We have a long tradition of not listening, and therefore we have fantastic benefits just awaiting us as we begin to listen more carefully and more responsively. Now, when we talk about listening responsively, that means if you say something, if you make a request to me, that I try and summarize your request as fairly and as briefly as I can. For example, you could be describing a meeting that's coming up next week, and I could say, okay, Dan, I hear you want me to be at this meeting for about an hour next Thursday at 5 o'clock. Is that right? Now, that's called responsive listening. I'm responding to what you say, but I keep my response really short, and I kind of pass the microphone back to you so that you can correct me or give me more information. If I talk more than, when I'm listening responsively, if I respond for more than a sentence or two, in effect, I take over the conversation, and you don't feel like it's your turn anymore.
So it's more like the Roger over in
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you get it? I think Roger in radio signals, Roger means I got it, or did you get it? I think it means I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Roger that, I got it. Well, in this case, we want to say a little bit more than Roger. We want to say, so you want me to show up for an hour on next Thursday afternoon. Then you might correct me and say, no, I only need to be there for 10 minutes, Dennis. Just show up at 5 o'clock, we'll give you a 10-minute slot, and that's all we need of your time. So by my trying to summarize your request, that draws more information out of you. You can correct me, and it's okay. So that's number 1 of the 7 Challenges workbook. I wrote the 7 Challenges workbook out of a particularly interesting predicament. I was doing research on improving team performance, improving team building, and I was looking into communication skills, and what I found is that there are thousands of pieces of good advice about how to communicate better. Well, but nobody can have a conversation juggling thousands of pieces of good advice in their head at the same time. So the challenge then becomes, out of all of those thousands of pieces of good advice, which are the ones that are the most important? even though we can't answer that question perfectly, we can answer it well, or any answer, any effort to clarify those issues is better than no effort at all. And so the result of that was the 7 Challenges Workbook, which is my effort to identify the areas that are going to be most rewarding. Now, another one that I found, which I think is very, very interesting, is to explain your conversational intent and invite consent of your conversation partner. Lots of times we just walk up to people and we start a conversation. But it turns out if we really want the cooperation of our conversation partner, we need to let them know what kind of conversation we want to have. I think the most frequent example of that is I may come to you and I may start describing a difficult experience that I've had, and you don't know whether I just want to cry on your shoulder or whether I want you to help me solve the problem.
Yeah.
So rather than relying on you to guess the right answer of what's my intention, I can actually share my intention. I can say, hey Dan, I really need to blow off some steam about this thing. You don't need to solve this problem, but I just want to gripe out loud for a minute. Then you would know all I need you to do is be a listener. Or I could say, hey Dan, I'm really in a jam. I need your help. Can you help me think our way through this predicament we're in? You see how different those conversations are. And so if I want you to cooperate, it helps a lot if I let you know, if I invite you to cooperate with me in a particular way. That gives you the information that you need to cooperate more appropriately. That is challenge 2. Explaining your conversational intent and inviting consent of your conversation partner. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm really curious about how these things are applied. I'm always thinking about how do we communicate better with our customers and how do we communicate better with our team. And I'm thinking about customers for a minute. I think we even need to have that kind of communication with our customers to inquire or tell them or communicate to them what it is that we're looking for in the conversation. If, for example, we're trying to validate one of our business assumptions, we need to be able to go out and talk with our customer in the field to validate one of these assumptions. We want to know, how would we apply that here?
Well, first of all, you'd say something like, so you're Mr. Customer, and I'd say, well, Mr. Customer, it would help me meet your needs so much if I could have a 5-minute brainstorm with you. See, you're my customer and I'm asking for your help. Now, I said 5 minutes. If I wanted 5 hours, then I'd say, well, Mr. Customer, it would help us meet your needs so much if we could have you for about 5 hours. So could we invite you for a day up to the plant? You could walk around, we can explore, your needs and how we can hitch up our manufacturing capacity to your needs. Could be 5 minutes, could be 5 hours. If I don't say, how do you know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you may, and there's 2 ways that could go wrong. I couldn't say anything, but I really want 5 hours of yours, and then when I really would start dragging you into it, you're going, God, what did I get myself into? Or I could think, or it could be the other way around. You might imagine that I want a lot of time from you when I only want a few minutes. So the more specific we can get, that's the better it is. The thing about human communication is based on leaving most stuff out because we assume this understood context. But as soon as the situation changes, we need to shift gears and bring the details back in. And so communication continually tacks between accuracy and brevity. It gets briefer and briefer and briefer until people start misunderstanding each other. Then you add more detail and more detail until people have enough detail, but they're slowing down. And so it just goes back and forth like that. But knowing when to shift gears, give more information, really helps the other person cooperate with you. So that is challenge 2. And you'll notice that in the outline of the 7 Challenges Workbook, explaining your conversational intent and inviting consent comes before expressing yourself more clearly. Now you set up the conversation. The person is willing to have the conversation with you. Then we move to challenge 3, which is to express yourself more clearly and more completely.
Dennis, I'd like to bring that 7 challenges summary sheet up on the screen here. So,
okay.
Well, while I'm working on that, just maybe you could go through again, just summarize the 7 challenges, and I'll bring this up.
All right. Well, so number 1 is to start by listening more carefully and more responsively. Number 2 is to explain your conversational intent and invite the consent of your conversation partner. Challenge 3 is to express yourself more clearly and more completely by using a wide range of I statements. I call them the 5 I statements. Now, challenge 4 builds on that expressing yourself more clearly and more completely. Challenge 4 is to translate criticisms and complaints into requests. There we are. You've got us on the screen there. There's challenge 4. Now, if you can scroll down a little. Oh, I think maybe this does scroll down. Yes, you can see challenge 5 is to ask questions more open-endedly and more creatively. Lots of times we ask these yes-no questions and we don't really get the information that we need. So we're accidentally shutting people up instead of opening them up, which you can do by asking open-ended questions. Challenge 6 is to explore and express much more appreciation and gratitude and encouragement for the people around you who are doing good jobs. A lot of the time they get ignored, and that doesn't build a good team. Doesn't build a good team, doesn't build a good family either. And finally, challenge 7 kind of wraps around the 6 earlier challenges, and that is to adopt the continuous learning perspective. Toyota applied this to making cars and generally has made pretty good cars by learning continuously. But we could apply that to our lives, and we could live more graceful and more satisfying lives by being open to learn new skills. Rather than assuming, in business, you would never assume that you already know everything that you need to know and that you don't have to learn anything and you're going to be a total success. But it's amazing how in family life people make exactly those assumptions, and then they really suffer, and because they have conflicts and they haven't ever investigated things like listening first and providing a fair little summary of what the other person has to say and how that might influence the unfolding of a conflict.
Wonderful, Dennis. This is a really good sense, gives us a really good sense of how powerful these methods are in terms of kind of keeping the conversation going and getting what one needs from the conversation, and really hearing what the messages that you need to hear in order to be responsive. I'd like to just consider the context in which we're let's see, I'm still sharing my screen here. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was still sharing my screen, and so Dennis, I'd like to just kind of talk a little bit about the context of our use of these kind of skills. In the world of entrepreneuring, we need to do one thing that we didn't do well before. It's something we really discovered recently, and that is we need to validate our business assumptions. We need to be clear about what those business assumptions are, and then go out and communicate those assumptions and try to convey and understand from a customer, from a supplier, whomever that assumption is concerning, whether that's real or not, whether that's just in our heads or whether we want to convert this assumption into a fact. So the context in which we would really find value in, as an entrepreneur in validating our business really has to do with making the kind of approaches that you're talking about, talking with individual customers, communicating our intent, and trying to give these open-ended questions that allow the information to come back to us, but also to communicate about what it is our intent. I think it was a wonderful statement you said about how I really, in order for me to serve your needs best, or for me to give you the best value that I can give you, I really need to know what it is that you need. What are you looking for, so that I can provide that.
You can see that coming up in asking questions more open-endedly. And there's a whole tradition about asking open-ended questions that spans architecture, psychotherapy, and mathematics. And it's about how to ask the right question. So you can get comfortable, you can practice asking questions like, how comfortable would you be trying option B? You know, one of the things is that asking an open-ended question is a kind of promise to listen. When you ask an open-ended question, you're giving the person permission to answer in any way they feel. When I say, Dan Kimball, will you buy this product today? I'm not giving you a whole lot of room. I'm saying, I want you to agree with me right now. I want to close the sale. Now, what if I said, well, Dan, how comfortable would you feel wrapping up this sale today? Well, you might think about it. I might actually engage you in a dialogue that would wrap up the sale today, because I gave you permission to say no if you had to say no. You're much more willing to say yes if you know that you have kind of conversational permission to say no. You might answer, if I said, how comfortable would you be wrapping up the sale today? You might tell me, well, I'm not comfortable wrapping up the sale today because I need to get more information, but if you come back tomorrow, we could seal the deal. So you're giving me a lot of room, a lot of creative room to respond. When I try and push you into, when I try to coerce you in various subtle ways, it usually backfires. You know you're being coerced and you don't want to play. So giving up coercion is one of the great steps forward in human communication. Yeah. We think, oh, I'm just going to push that person right where I want them, except that if they have any chance, they'll leave and not come back.
Yeah. Very
so
good.
Building an enduring relationship with your customers means being willing to listen, being willing to learn, and wanting to know the situation from the other person's point of view.
Right, Dennis. I think that these 7 challenges, all of them need to be learned and mastered in some way. Is that right, or are there some that are more important than others?
Oh, I think they're all important, and the thing is that for any individual, one of the reasons why I said that question about what's most important, you can answer it well, but you can't answer it perfectly. All of these are important, but I can't tell you which is the most important of these challenges for you. You need to do a kind of a skill inventory and read down and think about, well, in which of these am I doing well, and in which of these am I kind of sloughing off? You know, where do I need attention? So I think it's kind of like a kaleidoscope or a snowflake. It's going to be different. There's these basic processes going on, but they're going to fall into a different pattern in every human life.
Yeah. So can you give us a little idea about what it is that we can expect from the next 7 weeks? Are we going to go through these separate challenges, or what do you have in mind?
Well, I want to go through the 7 challenges, give a little bit more information about each one, and have the members, the participants in our online seminar, do some exercises. Do a little bit of, trying out some listening exercises, trying out asking open-ended questions. In relation to explaining your conversational intent and inviting consent, I have a list of the 30 fundamental reasons why people have conversations. And one of the exercises I've done a lot is to have people go down the list and just try out each one. Because we tend to favor 4 or 5 of them, and we tend to just leave out the other 25. So I'm trying to that would be the same situation as if you only played 5 keys on the piano. There's all these other conversations that we could have, And I'm here from the Milky Way to tell you that, to give you permission to have those other conversations.
Oh, so it's a little bit like language. I mean, we can communicate with 200 words, or we can use the full gambit of 20,000 words.
Yes, yes.
And we get richer conversations that way.
Yeah. In this case, this is kind of what, in technically, you'd say this is meta. This is a meta discussion because we're discussing the kinds of discussions you could have.
Yeah, yeah.
So my exercise is to identify in ordinary language so that people can understand. Well, I can have a conversation with you where I want to just cry on your shoulder. I could have a conversation with you where I want to get your advice. I could have a conversation with you because I'm your supervisor and I need to give you your next work assignment. So it's very interesting to sort out those conversations. Another thing that happens with that particular challenge is people will be trying to have 2 or 3 conversations at once.
Yeah.
So it's really good to clarify your intentions so you kind of have one conversation at a time. If I'm trying to make a complaint to you and I'm trying to give you instructions for your next work day at the very same moment, you're going to get all sorts of mixed messages from me. So it'd be better for me to say, now I'm going to work on this one, now I'm going to work on that one. Yeah. So we'll explore that in the exercises about Challenge 2. And in Challenge 3, we'll explore the 5 I messages and try out making some sentences where we use the 5 I messages to express ourselves with crystalline clarity.
Good. Well, Dennis, I guess I'd like to just identify the kinds of things that the way we're going to conduct this. I'd like to kind of turn this on its head a little bit, rather than you being the purveyor of knowledge and just telling us what the 7 challenges are and teaching us. I think we'd like to do this in a different format, and you and I have discussed this a bit, that your 7 challenges workbook is online. Everybody and thousands of people have downloaded it. What we're recommending is that people download that book, they look at it, they begin to see learn what they need to know. You know, the homework is to learn all about the 7 challenges, but then to try to apply them here in our sessions. Obviously, we'll have to do some more introduction for the people who haven't had a chance to look over the material, but we then want to try to practice some of these things. Is that a good idea?
Well, I would really be delighted to do that, and I understand that is kind of the new way. That's the new way, that the new wave in education is to have people don't have the professor read the chapter to you, read the chapter at home, and when you come to class, do some experiments.
Yeah, the experiments are where the utility. Yeah, for us, the experiments are the utility. We can guide the experiments toward what we're going to use this communication skills for, and makes it more useful to us.
Well, I certainly I'd be delighted to guide you through the exercises and then have some open-ended, do little case studies where people can bring a particularly difficult challenge, and we can do a kind of online brainstorm about how we could apply the 7 challenges to that difficult situation.
That sounds wonderful. Dennis, thank you. I'm going to have to say we'll have to cut it at this point here. We're wanting to invite everyone who's listening to join us for the 7 weeks. You'll be getting more news about it and come back to visit so we can bring Dennis to you for a few weeks ongoing here, and we'll try to see if we can hone our skills in communication.
I look forward to being a participant in this across the world.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dennis. Thank you for joining us. Well, is there anything, parting words that you want to give to us, or? Oh,
may you walk in beauty, as the Navajo medicine men say. May you walk in beauty.
That's very nice. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was pretty good.